Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. We have another cuckoo clock to work on. This one here is a Oompha player cuckoo clock, and it's a 8-day, and it was shipped from Germany, but I can't find a date on what I do have here. It is written on the box that this clock has never ran or whatever, and I guess it's story time, but I'm going to save the story to you once you see the condition of the clock. Anyway, let me show you the clock. So this is the box. So this is the clock. It's got the little people up here that dance. The single guy, the single gal. And there'd be a single guy and a single gal again. The door is locked shut for the bird. And there's the bird. He looks like he's gray. Gray wings anyway. But all the people who have lost their head and they've been taken off or got ripped off the little brass plate that sets down on here, and then they dance back and forth. Does have a pendulum, needs tightened a little bit. Styrofoam all over the place. It has these nice heavy weights. 1260 8U, but that's grams more than likely. Very heavy weights. And I got a bag of parts. Just dump them out here and see what we have. This is a Black Forest cuckoo clock. Hand carved original Black Forest cuckoo. And so I'm going to glue that back on here. We have the drummer that still has his head. Here he lost his head, and I'm going to guess he's the one that plays whatever horn that is. This one here lost his head, but he's blowing that horn. So I think I have enough. Oh, yeah, I have enough heads. The brass plates. I have enough brass plates for the men to sit on. So far I'm doing pretty good. Let's turn this around and take a look at the movement. There, I do believe, is 2 tunes. Normally when you have one line, which obviously I can't read, then you have a second line. Normally that is 2 tunes, but it could be they couldn't fit all on one line. But with being an 8-day clock, I would think that I'd have 2 tunes. This is where the dancers go on, and that rod back here swings it back and forth to make them dance. Now looking at the back of this clock, it looks like it hasn't been opened because this paper's in here, and I think this paper's probably covering the gong so it's not rattling, making noise. It's in here tight. I don't know what's... There we go. So by the looks of things, I would say that this has been opened once because the chain is always wrapped up, and for some reason it's all over in here. Now there's a chance they wanted to operate this clock, but they didn't know what they were doing and never got far enough to get it to run. So let me get this chain all unhooked from inside here and we'll check it out. So I got the chain all untangled and back into the box, and more than likely I would say this clock has never ran. It's got the wire still tangled on the chain, which is kind of the way you'd stop the chain from coming off of its gears. So we'll pull that through if we can. And let's see, we got a plastic bag up here. And on the bellows themselves, the clips are still on here, and these are meant to keep the whistle box or the bellow closed, so that way in shipment, number one, they're not flopping up and down, because they could come off these wires, or these wires could come off from there. And also, when this clock is laying, let's say on its side or back or whatever, they'll almost naturally open, and then that'll kind of set where they're froze in, or I should say froze open. This is the clip, just simple. It says pull out, so it's just very simple to take those off. The sad thing is whoever had this clock or bought this clock, maybe they just don't have it in them to be able to set a clock up. The thing is, I'm surprised how much damage the clock has got on the band players and whatnot. I don't know if they're frustrated and threw the clock around a bit and finally gave up, or what happened, but we got her now. This does have a on and off night switch. I know it's upside down, but there it is. So pulling it would be having the music run. Let's pull on these chains a little bit, see which one does what. I don't have it level, obviously, I'm just holding it, but the pendulum works. The cuckoo works. And this here, the cuckoo bird played. So when it's done cuckooing, you notice this arm wire here isn't lifting enough to free the governor. And it's kind of odd, the wheel you see right, maybe you can see it, there it is, that wheel down there, this is the cuckoo side, but this way it spreads the weights evenly so they're not hitting. Normally you don't see those wheels unless it controls something going on with the clock. I'll try to hold on to that. So that was a half hour. We're going to come up to the hour. It's pushing the rod out of the music box. I'm not pulling on the music box weight at the moment. And to pull on the music box, you can see where that metal wire is is holding the fan. So let's finish the cuckoo. And now we should be able to, yeah. And there we go. By the looks of it, all I have to do is put the clock back together, all the pieces that got broke, and this clock should be good. The clock hasn't ran. There is a date on here. It says A34, and 34 means an 8 day. And this is dash 86. So in 86, this here clock was built, I guess is the way we'll put it. It's got some German, well, it's a regular, but it has some German writing, and I don't know if I can get this camera to focus close enough to it. Right there. So because this is a new clock and it has all of its pieces, I'm going to go ahead and bag up the wire that ties it all along the bottom to hold the chains into place. And I'm also going to bag up these that were keeping the bellow closed, because I think when you buy a clock from somebody and it's a used clock, let's say, if they happen to have those, that's kind of a cool thing to have. Otherwise, I make my own. If I ship any clocks, this is just out of that soft wire. I think they tie conduit, or not conduit, a rebar together, and so it's real soft, and so it's easy to make it a little bit smaller or make it a little bit larger, and then just slide it over the bellow to hold it shut. I'm also going to save this paper because, again, that's kind of unique to have something that actually came with the clock. And the spring is close to the board, but it's not touching, so that's a good thing too. I'll have to set it on here and line it up. So it's not even hitting, and so normally you can bend your spring up or your gong up just a little bit and try it again. That's too much. So that's not bad. Normally, if you have to move it a lot, you should go ahead and loosen it from the bracket that holds the spring and move it up a little bit closer to where the pendulum or the hammer would be, and then you can do your final adjustments. That's what's good about having the hole. Now, surprisingly, on the newer clocks, I guess, they have this foam glued on here. Normally they have a nail they drove into the bottom, and then they clip it off, and then that nail would kind of stab your wall. It's not that noticeable, no big deal, but that there saves your clock, so every time you wind it, it doesn't want to move from side to side or whatever. And there's a chance, if this clock gives me a problem, I'll be putting those nails in, peeling these off, and I'll have the original way of them having the clock stable on the wall. These here do have a wire sticking out of one side, and what it does, it catches into the slot here, depending which way your man is. Make it easier for me, make sure it's on there. Just set these plates on there. Make sure they hooked into that. Of course, I have to glue his piece back on. But you can see, actually it's up front where it's supposed to be. But what I'll do is I'll put some hot glue on here and then just push those guys on there once I have them glued back together again. I also noticed one of the shingle pieces are missing, and I can doll that up with a dark marker or something so you might not notice that. But the roof is all intact otherwise. Now this roof is what we'll call single pieces, and usually when you buy new, if these are tiled in singly, then that's what raises the price on the clock when you're buying it brand new. So I got the tree glued back in, and I'm using a clamp because I used actual glue. I used the super glue to glue their heads back on. I used hot glue to glue them back onto their brass disc. And now all I have to do is wait for this to dry. So we got the clock going again, and I hate to say it, but unless it was caused from damage from the people that own this clock, if they did unpack it and whatnot, they would have never got it running possibly. On the clock, I had to bend the wire behind the pendulum because otherwise the clock would have to set crooked, and normally people don't think about tilting their clock until they can hear the pendulum and the movement ticking, an even tick-tock sound. Anyway, it's ticking just fine now. It's leveled and sounds beautiful. So with being an 8-day clock, which brings you money, we'll say, in which I got a good deal on this, as usual. Well, normally. Anyway, I am very happy with that clock. Got the people put back together again. And you can't necessarily tell any damage on the clock anymore, especially because I got all the pieces glued back together. Don't forget to subscribe because it's free, and give me a thumbs up if you don't mind. And if you enjoyed the video. And until next time, God bless.